The city morning sun had that golden, almost theatrical glow that made the skyscrapers shimmer like glass sculptures. The scent of freshly baked bread and the faint exhaust from morning traffic mingled in the air, creating a rhythm only the city's early risers understood. From her floor-to-ceiling windows in a high-rise penthouse overlooking the island, Brenda Williams watched the city wake. She sipped her steaming cappuccino, her perfectly manicured fingers curling around the delicate porcelain cup. Her reflection in the glass was almost surreal: flawless skin, silk long black hair tied flowed over her shoulders, a crisp designer dress perfectly tucked fitted on her body. To the world, Brenda Williams had it all: beauty, brains, and a family whose wealth could rival that of most nations. But today, like most days, she felt like a bird trapped in a gilded cage. "Brenda, breakfast is ready," her mother's voice floated from the adjoining room, tight with control and expectation. "Yes, Mama," she replied softly, forcing a smile. Inside, she felt a tension that always grew heavier at this hour, the invisible chains of family pressure wrapping around her chest. Her parents' mansion wasn't just a house, it was a fortress of expectations. Every marble floor, crystal chandelier, and imported Italian couch was a reminder of what she was supposed to become: a trophy wife, a figurehead of opulence to match her family's influence. She loved her parents, yes, but their version of love came with terms, conditions, and a strict rulebook. At the breakfast table, the conversation was already steered toward her future. "Brenda, Mr. Gary will be joining us tonight for dinner," her father said without preamble. His eyes, sharp as polished diamonds, studied her face, waiting for that flicker of excitement he expected. Brenda's stomach sank. Mr. Gary, the embodiment of every societal expectation she despised. Cold, arrogant, successful, and, as her friends whispered, utterly incapable of understanding anything beyond wealth. "Yes, Papa," she said evenly, keeping her tone neutral. She knew her attempt at resistance would be futile. A single sigh or rolled eye would trigger her mother's internal alarm bells. "Tonight is important, Brenda," her mother added, her voice like silk wrapping steel. "You must make a good impression. This is not merely a dinner, it's your future. Think of what your grandfather built for us. Our legacy depends on strategic alliances." Brenda nodded, her face calm but her heart troubled. The word strategic alliances felt like chains clanging around her wrists. She was in her late 20s, educated, articulate, with a heart that longed for something real: love, adventure, freedom, but in her family's eyes, she was a chess piece, moving according to someone else's plan. After breakfast, she walked through the vast corridors of the mansion, past oil paintings of stern ancestors and marble busts that seemed to silently judge her. In the library, sunlight streamed through tall windows, illuminating shelves heavy with leather-bound books. For a moment, she let herself imagine a life beyond wealth, a life where she could wander the city streets unnoticed, help people, meet someone who saw her for who she truly was, not her family name. But reality snapped back. The penthouse called her to meetings, charity galas, and the endless cycle of appearances. Her designer heels clicked against the polished floor as she walked through the corridor, ready for a day in her carefully curated life. By noon, Brenda stepped in at a corporate networking lunch in the heart of the city. The restaurant was a playground for the rich, floor-to-ceiling glass walls overlooking yachts, the air scented with imported wines and gourmet delicacies. She smiled, nodded, and laughed at jokes she didn't fully understand. Everything in her body felt alien here, the laughter forced, the conversations hollow. Across the table, Mr. Gary's sharp gaze occasionally flicked toward her. He was impeccably dressed in designer blue suit, hair well trimmed, a man who exuded power and control. He leaned back in his chair, glass of Chardonnay in hand, and said casually, "You know, Brenda, a woman like you should embrace the life she's meant for. Security, influence, respect, not these trivial dreams." Brenda felt a small spark of rebellion, but she swallowed it. Her mind whispered, "Trivial to him, perhaps, but essential to me." After lunch, she excused herself and stepped outside, needing air. The city's pulse hit her instantly, the honking of cars and street vendors calling out. For a brief moment, she felt free, unobserved. She wandered toward a quieter street, her heels clicking against uneven pavement, a reminder that even freedom had obstacles in her world. She stopped outside a small cafe. A group of street children laughed nearby, chasing a stray dog. Their carefree existence, raw and unpolished, made her chest ache. Here was life, raw and unfiltered, and she was only allowed glimpses from behind glass walls and luxury cars. And then, across the street, she saw him. Not yet knowing who he was, she noticed a man sitting nearby, coat threadbare, shoes scuffed, a small cardboard sign "few cents for food" clearly handwritten lying beside him. His eyes were calm, intelligent, dignified, even in his apparent misfortune. She couldn't look away. He was a puzzle she couldn't yet solve, a presence that contrasted everything she had known. There was a strength in him, a story she couldn't yet read, but something in her chest stirred curiosity, fascination, maybe even the tiniest spark of hope. A few weeks later, back at the mansion, the day grew darker. Chandeliers glittered in the dining, expensive wines and assorted dishes were prepared, all for a family dinner with Mr. Gary arranged by her parents. Brenda sat in front of the mirror, her reflection flawless, yet inside, she felt fractured. Her heart whispered of the streets she had glimpsed, of a life untouched by demands, a man whose world she could barely imagine, and a freedom she could almost taste. Gary arrived and there was a change of plan. He suddenly opted to take Brenda out on a dinner date instead of the planned family dinner. "Brenda, hurry up, Gary is outside," her mother shouted from the dining room. "Do not keep him waiting for long." As she descended the grand staircase, heels echoing in the marble hall, Brenda felt the weight of the golden cage. Every step was a reminder. Society expected her to marry security, not love, to honor family, not heart, to live a perfect life while her soul yearned for something real. The car awaited at the driveway, sleek and black, leather interior that whispered luxury. She slid inside, her heart drifting to the streets outside, where life continued in raw, messy beauty, streets that were not hers, yet somehow called to her. Tonight, the dinner would cement her path or perhaps, just perhaps, set in motion the first cracks in the perfect life she was expected to lead. As they drove past the bustling streets of the city, her mind lingered on the man she had glimpsed outside the cafe. Who was he? Why did her heart respond to him when her world demanded nothing but control, wealth, and appearances? The city slept in fragments that night, luxury towers glowing with life, street lamps flickering over cracked pavement, alleys shrouded in darkness where the unseen thrived. Somewhere in one of those forgotten corners, on the cold concrete floor, sat Ezekiel, at his usual spot begging for alms. He was a man who had once walked in boardrooms, whose handshake had sealed deals worth millions. Now, he was invisible to the world. The wind cut through the layers of worn fabric, but he did not shiver. He had learned to endure the city's cruelty, to survive without complaint. Ezekiel's eyes, dark and sharp, scanned the quiet street. He gazed sideways and sighed. Survival was a constant battle, a careful dance between hunger, danger, and dignity. Flashbacks haunted him like persistent ghosts. 3 years ago, he had been on the rise, a promising entrepreneur in the bustling tech industry. His company, Zikri Tech Solutions, was poised to revolutionize logistics. Investors fought for a piece of his vision. He had wealth, influence, and a fiancée who laughed at his jokes with warmth he had never known. Then betrayal struck, not from a stranger, but from the closest. Partners who had sworn loyalty, friends who had envied him, a family trust that evaporated overnight. Legal battles, debts, and a scandal orchestrated by someone he had trusted left him bankrupt. The city that once celebrated him turned its back. And then, his fiancée vanished, his family's support evaporated. One morning he found himself sitting on the streets, designer suit replaced by rags, business cards replaced by cardboard begging signs. Back in the present, Ezekiel's hands moved deftly, picking up scraps of food left in the waste bin near a restaurant. Yet even with all his survival skills, he carried a quiet grief, an invisible armor built from loss. It showed in the way he walked, always alert but never rushed, in the way he helped others quietly, never seeking gratitude, in the depth of his gaze, which had witnessed betrayal and pain most could not imagine. Flashback, a memory he couldn't escape. A rainy afternoon, the day his company collapsed. Board members had turned on him, each word like a dagger. You mismanaged funds, Ezekiel. Your vision is obsolete. His employees had left him, one by one. Even his closest friend, who had promised loyalty, had whispered in the boardroom, "Better you fail than me." That evening, walking home in the rain, soaked to the bone, he realized the world could be crueler than any storm. And the streets, he thought bitterly, would teach him humility he had never asked for. Now, Ezekiel sat at a street corner, surveying the small community that had grown around him. Other homeless men and women, each with their own stories of betrayal and loss. He had become an unspoken leader here, not by power, but by respect. Yet, beneath this dignity, Ezekiel's mind never rested. His intellect, once celebrated in boardrooms, now analyzed every corner of the city for opportunity, for survival, for a chance to reclaim what had been stolen. It was during one of the nights, beneath a flickering streetlight, that he found an old notebook, a discarded ledger from a corporate office. Inside were detailed notes on investment strategies, legal loopholes, and business contracts. Ezekiel's heart tightened. This was not just trash, it was a gift, a clue, perhaps even a tool to rebuild. He pocketed the notebook carefully, aware of how quickly opportunity could vanish. Ezekiel's world was harsh, but it had its moments of fleeting beauty. He would quietly watch the children play along the street, vendors hawked fruits. He would sometimes help those in need, giving a blanket to an old woman and sharing wisdom without judgment. He was a man broken by the world but not broken within. His dignity, wisdom, and integrity survived even when his suit had vanished, even when wealth had abandoned him. And deep down, he knew fate had not finished writing his story. Somewhere, hidden, lay the key to reclaiming not just fortune, but purpose, respect, and perhaps, love. That night, as Ezekiel lay asleep under a street lamp, the city quieted around him. The wind rustled through empty crates, his only companion, his dog curled next to him, and he closed his eyes, letting exhaustion take him briefly. In his dreams, he walked corridors of glass and marble again, not as a servant to the whims of society, but as a man in control of his destiny. And somewhere in the shadows of the city, destiny was stirring, preparing to intertwine with a life he could never have imagined. The next day he sat playing with his dog, a spark of humanity, crossed paths with the woman whose world was everything he had lost and maybe everything he still desired. Ezekiel did not know yet who she was. But the city, relentless and unpredictable, was about to introduce them in a way that would alter both their lives forever. The sky over the city had grown heavy, pregnant with dark clouds that threatened rain. The city pulsed with life despite the looming storm, street vendors shouted their final calls, cars honked in endless traffic jams. And pedestrians hurried along the road, umbrellas bobbing like black mushrooms. Brenda William, wrapped in an elegant cashmere dress, navigated the crowded streets after a late meeting. Her heels clicked against the wet pavement, a rhythm that made her aware of every eye she passed. Rain began to fall, soft. That's when she saw him again. He was seated on a low step across the street, a cardboard sign lying next to him, "Anything helps." God bless. He was quiet, but there was an undeniable dignity in his posture. His dark eyes, deep and intelligent, scanned the street with quiet awareness, as if he belonged to a world entirely his own. Brenda's heart froze. Something about him, the compassion in his eyes, the calmness in his appearance, made her stomach flutter, though she didn't understand why. Before she could look away, her heel slipped on the wet pavement. She tried to regain balance, but the city had other plans. A motorcycle swerved too close, and the rider barely avoided crashing into her. Heart racing, she stumbled backward right into the man's arms. "Are you okay?" he asked. He was already steadying her, his hands firm yet gentle. "I've got you," he said calmly, his voice low, with a timbre that seemed to steady the rain itself. Brenda's face flushed. Thank you," she stammered, suddenly acutely aware of their closeness. He was taller than she expected, broad-shouldered, with the kind of posture that radiated strength and confidence despite the tattered coat and worn shoes. "You should be careful in this weather," he said. "It's easy to slip on these streets." I know," she replied, flustered. "I just wasn't paying attention." She realized she didn't even know his name. But already, a strange familiarity tugged at her chest, a pull she had never felt toward anyone before. Can I buy you a coffee?" she asked impulsively, surprising even herself. Thanks. He hesitated, then shook his head gently. I'm fine. Really. But, thank you. His gaze lingered on her, and in that moment, something unspoken passed between them, a recognition that transcended wealth, status, and circumstance. Brenda hesitated, feeling an uncharacteristic boldness. I'm Brenda, she said softly, her voice almost drowned by the rain. Ezekiel, he replied, not offering his hand, simply allowing the name to hang between them. But people call me Zachary. Brenda's lips curved slightly at the casual intimacy of it. Zachary, she repeated, tasting the name. It was strange and familiar all at once. The rain intensified. They moved under the awning of the cafe, just close enough to share shelter and cup of hot coffee. Brenda noticed details she hadn't expected, the sharp intelligence in his eyes, the way his fingers moved unconsciously as if used to solving problems, his quiet awareness of everything around him. Why are you out here? She asked, almost unable to meet his gaze directly. She didn't mean to sound condescending, but she couldn't help it, his world was entirely strange. He looked at her, calm, measured. Because this is where I am. There was no self-pity in his tone, only acceptance. Life happens, and we survive. Some better than others. You have a warm dress, dry shoes. You are lucky tonight. Brenda's heart ached. His dignity, even in apparent poverty, was disarming. She wanted to step back into her life of luxury, but part of her wanted to stay, to learn more about this man who seemed to carry the weight of the world without complaint. The storm showed no signs of stopping. City streets are dangerous, even for those who think they belong, he said. Yes, she whispered, almost to herself. I know the feeling. She didn't explain. How could she? To him, her life was perfect, untouchable, but in reality, she was trapped, caged in wealth, suffocating under expectation. As the rain slowed down, it was time for Brenda to leave. I should go, Brenda said finally, feeling the weight of her responsibilities press on her like 1,000 hands. She hesitated. But, thank you, Zachary. He nodded. Stay safe. And, don't forget the little things in life. They matter more than the world will tell you. Brenda smiled faintly, a warmth blossoming inside her. I'll remember. Over the next few days, she couldn't stop thinking about him. The image of Ezekiel, the dignity in his eyes, the calm strength he carried despite circumstances, it haunted her more than she wanted to admit. Meanwhile, Ezekiel continued his life on the streets, observing the city with quiet precision. But even he found himself replaying the encounter, the warmth and curiosity in the woman's eyes, her voice, and the delicate way she had balanced herself in the storm. Something about her presence lingered, like a melody he could not forget. Neither of them knew it yet, but the city had begun weaving their destinies together. A future that neither expected, a story of love, defiance, and redemption, was slowly forming in the rain-soaked streets of the city. That night, Brenda sat in her luxurious bedroom, staring, her mind wandering to the streets and the man whose eyes had pierced her carefully maintained armor. Somewhere in the city, Ezekiel lay beneath a flickering streetlight, thinking of her laughter, of the warmth that had seeped into his cold world. Two lives, separated by fortune and misfortune, were on a collision course. The city's storm had passed, but the storm between their hearts was just beginning. The days that followed, it seemed the city itself was conspiring to push Brenda toward the streets she had glimpsed. Every commute, every errand, seemed to carry whispers of Zachary, the man who had so quietly, yet profoundly, entered her life. She found herself parking her car and intentionally taking different routes, wandering past narrow alleys and bustling streets, hoping for another glimpse. It wasn't curiosity alone, it was a strange pull she could not explain. One afternoon, she carried a small bag of food, sandwiches, bottled water, a few fruits. She hesitated at the edge of the street, scanning the familiar corner. There he was, lay against the concrete, head rested on empty crate, eyes closed as if sleeping, though the city never truly slept. Zachary, she called softly. His eyes opened, dark and alert, a flicker of surprise crossing his rugged face. Brenda, he said, voice cautious but not cold. You shouldn't be here. I thought. Maybe you're hungry, she said, holding out the bag. I know it's not much. She sat next to him with the food placed on top of the blanket, in the shadows of the city she had always avoided. He studied her carefully, as if weighing intentions. "Thank you," he murmured. "You have no idea how much this helps." She smiled, but her heart ached as she gazed at him. "Why are you out here? I mean, why this life?" He looked away, his jaw tight. "Because life sometimes strips you of everything. I survive. I endure. And I live one day at a time." His honesty, raw and unfiltered, struck her more deeply than she could have imagined. Here was a man who had nothing by society's standards, yet carried himself with more dignity than anyone she had met in her golden world. Days turned into weeks, and their encounters became routine. Brenda always brought food and most times ate with him. Ezekiel accepted everything humbly, yet never asked for more than what he needed. They began talking, really talking, about everything. Dreams, regrets, hopes, and small joys. Ezekiel told her about the streets, about people who survived with ingenuity and courage. Brenda spoke of her world, the mansion, the parties, the suffocating expectations. "You don't belong there, you're too alive, too human for a cage of marble and gold." Brenda forced a smile softly, though there was pain in it. "It feels like I don't belong anywhere," she admitted. "Everyone expects me to be perfect, obedient, grateful, but inside, I just want to breathe." "Then breathe," he said quietly. "Even if it's for just a moment. Life is cruel enough, don't let it steal your soul too." Their secret meetings became a sanctuary. Brenda learned the rhythm of the streets, guided by Ezekiel through hidden paths and forgotten corners of the city. She began to see beauty in chaos, children laughing despite hunger, vendors offering small kindnesses to strangers, stray animals surviving against the odds. And Ezekiel? He revealed layers she could never have anticipated. His mind was sharp, quick, and full of wisdom. He could analyze city politics, read legal documents, and solve problems she hadn't even realized existed. It was clear he had once belonged to another world, one of opportunity and intellect, but now, he channeled it into survival. "You know," she said, "you're extraordinary. Even like this." He smiled, a faint curve of lips that made her chest flutter. "Extraordinary," he echoed. "Maybe. Or maybe I just refuse to let the world break me completely." Their connection deepened not just in conversation, but in the subtle intimacy of shared moments, walking side by side, laughing at small absurdities, stealing warmth under the occasional street lamp. But the world outside their secret bubble remained unforgiving. At the mansion, family pressure intensified. Her parents spoke of Mr. Gary nightly, praising his wealth, power, and suitability. "Brenda, you must meet him at the gala tomorrow," her mother reminded her sharply. "I have arranged everything. Do not embarrass the family." Brenda's mind wandered to Ezekiel, to his laughter echoing in alleys, to the kindness in his eyes. How could she return to a life that suffocated her, when she had tasted something real? Meanwhile, whispers in the streets suggested that their bond was no secret. A street vendor who knew Brenda's family noticed her bringing gifts and food. "This is strange. She's world apart from him," he muttered to a friend. "And he's not even up to her servants. They have absolutely nothing in common. Something fishy is going on." Ezekiel sensed the growing danger, though he never discouraged her visits outright. "We must be careful," he warned one evening. "Curiosity attracts attention, and attention can be dangerous." Brenda nodded. "I know, but I can't stay away." And Ezekiel, for the first time, allowed himself a rare vulnerability. "I care for you, Brenda. More than I should. But you belong to a world that will never understand this. You have to promise me you must protect yourself, even if it means staying away from me." Her chest tightened, face frowned. I can't," she whispered. "Not now. Not after knowing you." Their secret love flourished amidst danger, secrecy, and the contrasts of the city. In the alleys, they laughed, they argued, they shared dreams. In the luxury high-rises, her family schemed, oblivious to the bond growing stronger than gold, status, or expectation. One evening, as they walked the street, Brenda, surprised at Ezekiel's street survival knowledge, asked, How do you know all these things? I learned to survive, he said simply. And survival teaches you things that no school, no mansion, no wealth can. She looked at him in awe, her heart aching with a strange, bittersweet longing. Here was a man who had lost everything, yet possessed more than anyone she had ever known. But danger was never far. One afternoon, Brenda's friend, a colleague from the office who had secretly begun to follow her errands, caught sight of her. Eyes widened, shock mirrored across her face. "Brenda," she shouted urgently. "Who is he? What are you doing here?" Brenda's heart raced. It's not what you think. Just a friend." But the seed of suspicion was planted. Soon, whispers would reach her family. Soon, her carefully hidden rebellion would face scrutiny. Ezekiel noticed her tension, his gaze piercing. "They've seen you," he said quietly. "We can't hide forever. But I promise. I'll protect you, no matter what comes," he said. Brenda felt tears prick her eyes. Why would you care so much for me, a stranger?" "Because," he said softly, "you see me. And I see you. The real you. Not the mask everyone else demands you wear." And in that moment, standing face to face with the city buzzing dangerously around them, they understood something profound. Love doesn't care about wealth, status, or society. Love chooses its own path, and theirs was beginning. As the night deepened, Brenda returned to her mansion, her heart torn between family obligations and the thrilling, terrifying pull of forbidden love. Meanwhile, Ezekiel remained in the shadows, watching over her, silently vowing that no force, wealth, status, or betrayal would ever harm what was beginning to bloom between them. And so, Brenda had chosen her heart over duty, and Ezekiel had chosen truth over silence. But choices carry consequences, and the world around them was sharpening its knives. Two souls had declared love in a city that fed on betrayal, power, and appearances. And while the night had given them courage, the dawn promised a reckoning neither could escape. The storm was no longer coming, it had already begun. But what price will Brenda and Ezekiel pay for defying the world? Will love protect them, or destroy them? Step into part 2, where desperate measures are taken, sacrifices are made, and hidden truths threaten to change everything. Thank you for watching. Remain blessed.